did nothing wrong. She asked Inspector General Isabel Cumming to investigate, and the IG found Mosby was out of town for 144 days during a 2-year period and did not report 15 out-of-town trips to the City Board of Estimates and used businesses to write off taxes. There's also her controversial prosecution policies. In 2020, she announced she would no longer prosecute what she calls low-level crime. Last year, she made the change permanent. In her first year in office, murders jumped 63% to more than 300, and they have remained above 300 every year since.
All right, Fox 45 will continue to stay on this breaking news story of City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby under federal indictment. We'll be back in a moment.
And we continue to follow the breaking news today. Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has been federally indicted on charges of perjury and a false statement on a loan application.
Mackenzie Frost dives into Mosby's financial situation. Mackenzie?
Well, Kai and Mary, we're continuing to comb through this federal indictment. We know that Maxine Stryker is going through counts 1 and 3, and 2 and 4 really deals with the financial situations and these vacation homes that Marilyn Mosby had purchased a few months ago. Now, the count 2 we know is about 1, and count 4 is about the second vacation home. That one is on Longboat Key down in Florida. And really what it comes down to, according to this indictment and the investigation, is that Mosby did not disclose that $45,000 tax lien that was placed on her home that she owns with current City Council President Nick Mosby here in Baltimore. We know that that tax lien was eventually paid off. We had talked to Council President Mosby time and time again. That story continuously changing about how the tax lien was placed there, if it was there at all, and when, in fact, it was paid off. But according to this indictment, it says that she did not disclose that tax lien on the financial documentation, in which she signed under perjury of law, which is exactly what her attorney was complaining about and telling reporters months ago when he had a news conference talking about this investigation, calling it all political. Now, I want to walk you through some of the timeline. This is what we know about one of the vacation homes in Florida. On September 20th of 2020, the home was bought for $445,000. On September 10th of 2021, A. Scott Bolden, which is Marilyn Mosby's attorney, met with the federal investigation team about this current investigation. 7 days later, Mosby listed the home for sale for $725,000. Now, the home was finally closed on November 2nd for $696,000, meaning that Mosby made a significant amount of money on that home sale. When she sold that home, she knew that this investigation was going on based on the information that her attorney has provided to the public. Now, at that time, A. Scott Bolden says that he was under the impression that the federal government was in fact building a perjury case, and based on this federal indictment that we are now going through, that was accurate.
And thank you, Mackenzie. And you know, it's interesting. We are going to talk with former federal prosecutor Thuroo Vignarajah right now. The investigation seemed to be focusing on the churches, the tax returns, the bank statements, the credit card, all of that. But what they ended up finding was smaller than, you know, the net that they threw out there. Yeah,
the net does not seem to have been cast as widely as we thought, although I suppose it's also possible we could see more charges down the road. But that's probably a good point, Mary, to bring in Thuroo Vignarajah. He's in the studio right now, former state and federal prosecutor. And Thuroo, let's go to take Mary's point there, that this net does seem to be smaller cast, but is it possible additional indictments just against Ms. Mosby herself could come down the road?
Yeah, let me start by saying, Kai and Mary, that I think everybody needs to take a moment to pause and understand how much of a dark shadow this casts on our city. There are people that love Marilyn Mosby. There are people that don't. There are people that ran against her. There are people that avidly support her policies. But at the end of the day, this is the last thing that Baltimore City needs. We can talk about the legal dimensions of this, but everybody should take a moment and remember that she is a public servant. She is a mother. She is a wife, and she is a person who has now been charged with a very, very serious set of crimes, and that is the last thing that anybody should be rooting for. So if there's anybody at home, you know, cheering for this, shame on you, because that's not what Baltimore needs right now.
That is a point well taken, certainly. Let's then get into some of the weeds of what you've just read in the indictment. What stands out most to you? Yeah,
and I think your other question is an important one, which is the investigation had a wide range of potential issues to look into. That's not uncommon. As a former federal prosecutor, often you send out subpoenas to find out what potential information there is out there before you winnow down the specific charges that you start with. There's also something known as a superseding indictment, a second indictment where additional charges are filed if the first set of charges doesn't end, for example, in a plea negotiation. So that's also common. So it's hard to tell from this indictment that the other avenues of investigation were fruitless. They may very well also be ongoing. They may be the subject of a superseding indictment. That is a subject not to be speculated on, but it does mean that this has been a long-term, complicated, protracted investigation, and these are the initial fruits of that investigation.
Interesting. Thuroo, let's further talk about the issue you made. First of all, this is a sad day for the city of Baltimore, the indictment in and of itself, because she is a public official. She has a presumption of innocence, which is, of course, how our legal system is structured, and people are thankful for that. The question I have, though, goes back to what Kurt Nachman said. Do you believe, and this is your opinion, that in the interim, while the investigation and the indictment is in place, do you believe, in your opinion, that she should step aside, take a leave of absence, in other words, from office?
Candidly, it's a really hard question. It's a really hard question because it implicates her family. It implicates her professional status. The election is some 6 months away. In other contexts, when this occurred with Catherine Pugh, with Darrell D'Souza, I did call for those individuals to step down because I think that's the appropriate thing to do, especially in a city like Baltimore where trust is at a premium. To have your state's attorney, the chief law enforcement officer in your city under federal charges, I think there's two things that occur. One, it's very difficult to work with the U.S. Attorney's Office and with federal agents when those individuals have filed criminal charges against you. And number two, as a symbolic matter, when this person of all persons has been charged with federal crimes, I do think it's appropriate, for the sake of the city, to step down. Whether she does that or not is a hard question for her family and her children and her husband to have to pray on.
I want to ask a little bit more about the charges that she's facing. 4 charges. They're federal charges of perjury and making a false statement. What penalties do you face in cases like this?
You know, I don't know the specific sentencing parameters for these specific charges. These are economic crimes. They're not violent crimes. But they are serious in 2 respects. One is from the face of the allegations, this looks like affirmative conduct. This is not an omission. This is not a failure to file a tax return. Daryl D'Souza, for example, had to go to federal prison for an omission crime. These are affirmative, deliberate allegations where she's putting her signature on loan documents, on applications for COVID relief. That's a more serious kind of crime and is often subject to a higher degree of sentences.
She's an attorney, though. I know these are alleged crimes. Should she not have known better? Should she have not been better advised?
You know, I think one of the things that jumps out at this is how many different things the state's attorney had going on while her principal focus should have been fighting crime in Baltimore City. And this is something that I think is fair game to criticize the state's attorney for. When there were reports last year of her missing, 180 days from the office, when there were reports of her starting businesses in Florida, those are distractions from a person who's charged with fighting violent crime in the most violent city in America. That's the kind of thing that gets you in trouble, not just in terms of not dotting your I's and crossing your T's and potentially making, really critical missteps in these important things. It also means you can't do your day job, which is making sure that prosecutions of violent criminals are being administered in an appropriate and respectful way.
All right, Drew, we're going to ask you to stay right there. We're going to take a brief break, and we'll continue to talk with you about this federal indictment against City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. We'll be right back.
Meredith?
And we want to welcome you back to Fox 45 breaking news coverage of the federal indictment of City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. Political analyst John Deedy joins us now via Zoom.
Yeah, John, let's talk about just your reaction to the indictment coming down today. A grand jury sees that there is enough evidence to bring charges against Marilyn Mosby, the City State's attorney.
I was kind of surprised a little bit because of what they were looking at, because originally a lot of people said they were looking at the taxes, and all of a sudden this thing came out. And this is one of the things, when the federal government starts investigating, there's a wide net, and they found this stuff, and she is in serious legal and political trouble.
John, as Thuru Vignarajah mentioned, the election for the City State's Attorney's Office is about 6 months away. Do you believe she could still effectively run if she's not, for instance, convicted on these charges? We still have to see how the legal process plays out. But the other part of this question is, looking at what's happening today, do you believe that she even should run?
I don't believe she should run. This is a very serious matter. The other thing is, as far as whether she can run, technically, legally, she can run. The issue will be how voters will react to a situation like this. Will they say this is unacceptable, or will they take the attitude D.C. voters took in the 1990s, who, after Marion Barry was arrested and went to jail, elected a mayor just a short time later? There's one thing I want to point out on these federal documents. When you sign a federal document, a federal loan document, above the space above your signature, there is something that basically says under penalty of perjury. So once you sign that document, you're basically saying that if these things come out untrue, you've already acknowledged that you're admitting to fraud. So she has a very serious problem there. There's also one other thing I will point out. If she is forced to resign, what happens is the Baltimore City court judges get together and they select a new acting state's attorney. Now, the last time this happened was in 1970, when Howard Cardin, the brother of Ben Cardin, was selected as city state's attorney, and when he ran, he lost in the primary. So there is precedent for something like this happening.
I was going to ask that, because you're a political analyst, but also our history, too. So this has happened before. What do you think about how should the public, Baltimore City residents, how should they deal with the news that we got today? How should they digest it? And what does it send? What message does it send to them that really essentially the top law enforcement official in our city is now indicted for crimes?
I think they should look at this. They should deal with it in a sense of, before getting a lot of the information from media, which it's very easy to do and listen to people like me, they should also look at the charging documents and read what is there, because that is basically the signed, sealed information right there. So I would suggest to anyone that is, oh, I just heard this from somewhere, take time, read the information. The thing that's going to be the problem for Marilyn Mosby is this investigation started in March. So we knew sooner or later this day would probably come in some sort of a sense. And right now, I think there's going to be a camp of people who are going to support her no matter what. And there's also going to be another group of people that are basically going to say, I'm not surprised. I knew this all along. She's been a very controversial and very polarizing state's attorney. So it may be difficult for her to run. The question I want to know from the political aspect right now is, this is an indictment. Catherine Pugh was not indicted, and city council members were calling on Pugh to resign. The question is, how will city council react? How will the mayor react? This is an elected public official that has been indicted on federal charges.
And John, quickly before you go,
in federal
John,
court, there's a 99% conviction ratio on charges like this.
John, quickly before you go, can her attorney, Mosby's attorney, A. Scott Bolden, make the argument, hey, look, 6 months away, now the feds are finally coming out with this indictment. This is political, which is something he's been saying all along.
Well, they're going to make that charge. You always play on defense. No attorney's going to say, well, yeah, they got the goods on my client. Right. The thing is, for her, she needs to get a real, legitimate federal attorney, someone who is an experienced defense attorney in federal cases. You don't get these other people, the hanger-oners, the people that have known her. You have to get a federal person in there, someone experienced in federal prosecutions. And the reason why is they know the system. And they're the ones who can probably negotiate a variety of things, including plea deals and things like this. Federal prosecutors, they're very experienced. In a situation like this, you want an experienced attorney who knows the federal system well, federal defense attorney. You can't play around and have these hanger-oners and these people who are just spokespeople. You have to have professionals because your freedom and future is on the line.
Absolutely. All right, John Dede, political analyst, thank you so much for your insight. We will check back in with you. Right now, we want to know what you think. Should City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby resign? You can weigh in by heading to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Again, Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has been federally indicted on charges of perjury and a false statement on a loan application.
Maxine Stryker joins us live to talk more about the charges that Mosby faces. Maxine?
Well, Mary and Kai, last time we spoke, we told you all about that first count of perjury. We're now digging into that third count, which is very similar to the first count, all dealing with COVID relief money and Mosby claiming hardship, that she needed this money. The indictment saying that is simply not true. Now, the third count says that on December 29th of 2020, she submitted a second City of Baltimore retirement savings deferred compensation plan under the CARES Act, saying that she needed this money. She requested $50,000 of withdrawal from her City of Baltimore employee retirement account. And by signing that form requesting that money, she certified that she was qualified for the coronavirus relief money from the federal government. Again, this count saying she falsely certified that she experienced adverse financial consequences stemming from the virus, having worked reduced hours or being laid off, having no child care or closing or reduced hours from her business. That is what she claimed when filing that she needed this money. Now, the indictment says she had not experienced any of those things, which she certified she did on those documents. In fact, they say that Mosby's gross salary in 2020 actually increased from the year before. So there was no reduction in income or hardship that she had claimed. We then found out from the third count that on December 31st, just 2 days after she received that $50,000, she received $45,000 for a down payment that she used for a second home in Longboat Key, Florida. You remember that she used that earlier withdrawal of $36,000 for a vacation home in Kissimmee, Florida. Again, we are still digging into these documents of perjury, the first and third counts of perjury. We will have much more for you soon. Mary and Kai.
Okay, Maxine Stryker, thank you.
Now, Attorney Kurt Nachman joins us once again via Zoom. And Kurt, I want to follow up on some of the things that Maxine Stryker, our anchor and reporter, is looking deeply into these charges and indictments. This is what the federal government alleges. But do we know the entire scope of whatever debt that Marilyn Mosby has? Because if her attorney may very well argue that she does have debt, and that was not necessarily spelled out in this indictment.
No, and really the debt is not the issue with regard to these charges. I mean, these charges are what you call paper charges. They are simply documents that Mosby signed where she said one thing in the document and the reality was something totally different. So we have a number of charges: false statement related to a COVID distribution that was already discussed, perjury related to a COVID retirement account distribution that was discussed, a false statement related to the first vacation home, and then the serious charge is failing to disclose her tax information for the second vacation home in Longboat Key. That carries a maximum penalty of 30 years in prison.
What are the chances that that penalty will be put upon her? I mean, talk to us about the process of what happens to her right now.
So, well, she'll have to get booked and processed. She'll get brought before a magistrate judge and they'll make release conditions. She'll more likely than not get released. Then the case will get set in for scheduling. There will be discovery exchange between the attorneys for Mosby and the government, and then they'll be set in for trial. The trial could be, it sounds like this case has been going on for a long period of time. There may be some discovery, but I think you could see this case coming to trial in, a year and a half. And from there, if she's found guilty of anything, because she's innocent until proven guilty, they would take a look at what's called sentencing guidelines to make a determination as to what is an appropriate sentence for her. It's not going to be 30 years. She doesn't have any prior record. She's not going to go to jail for the rest of her life. That's just simply not going to happen. It's not practical. And so you probably will look at one or more charges where she's found guilty. Typically, like I think a good example would be Ed Norris's case, because he was also convicted under the same section for the false statement related to a mortgage property. And so, he received a maximum sentence of a year, I believe. That's certainly far less than 30.
Absolutely.
Kurt, you said it's up to her to determine whether or not that she wants to take a leave of absence while this is going on. We do know that Ms. Mosby kicked out a lot of cases as city state's attorney involving police officers who had questionable things in their past or an issue like that. Could a defense attorney make a claim that a state's attorney who is under federal indictment, that there's an argument that they could make if she stays in office right now and doesn't take a leave of absence while a case is under her as she's an acting state's attorney? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I certainly, especially if you have, if I was representing a defendant who's charged with a financial crime, I certainly wouldn't want Ms. Mosby's office handling the investigation just because of the appearance of impropriety. So the only way that she can be removed is if she committed a city ethics violation, and the city board of ethics can come in and remove her from office. However, that is not likely to happen because these are all federal charges. Again, we don't know if there's any open ethics investigation from Baltimore City. We know that there was a prior inspector general report related to Mosby's conduct, but that really didn't have any criminal related implications. So the only way that she's going to get removed is if that happens. And then the second step would be if she were convicted, it would trigger an automatic suspension of her law license, and she would obviously be ineligible to serve as state's attorney if you're not an attorney.
All right, Kurt Nachman, thank you so much. You used to work in that office. It is complicated, that's for sure. We appreciate your expertise and your thoughts on all of this. We ask you to stand by as we pause our coverage of Marilyn Mosby's indictment today and take a look at our weather. There's Jasmine Lomax for us. Tell us, we've got maybe some snow on the way.
That's right. Winter is continuing for Maryland. Now, we got a taste of the warm temperatures yesterday, today, tomorrow, still keeping things warm, but it's the weekend when the cold temperatures arrive and when we have the next chance for a little bit of snow. There is still a lot of uncertainty about what we could see, but we do know that the timing will likely be Sunday afternoon, continuing into early Monday morning. We could be looking at snow as we start, but then it'll change to rain and possibly a wintry mix heading into early Monday morning. That, of course, could create hazardous conditions on the roadways. Now, the system that we're watching is currently over Canada, and it's expected to move down toward the plains and eventually toward the mid-Atlantic. So just to break down the timing, a cold front will move through overnight into tomorrow. That's going to lead to breezy conditions, and it will result in cold weather as we head into late Friday night, early Saturday morning. Now, we're looking at that system moving to the southeast as we head into Saturday and then toward our area by Sunday afternoon. Temperatures tomorrow in the 40s and then the 20s on Saturday, 30s on Sunday with the chance for snow and a wintry mix. And then as we head into the upcoming week, we stayed mostly dry with temperatures in the 30s and 40s. Back to you.
Jasmine, thank you. Stay with Fox 45. We're following breaking news. Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has been federally indicted on charges of perjury and a false statement on a loan application.
Our live team coverage continues next on Fox 45 News at 5.
Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3, 1.
Live from WBFF TV in Baltimore, this is Breaking News.
It is 5 o'clock and we are live with the breaking news of the day. After months of a federal investigation, charges have now been leveled against Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. She is now facing federal charges of perjury and making a false statement on a loan application.
Let's go right to Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost, who has a copy of the charging documents. Mackenzie, I know you're reading through this, and so is Maxine Stryker. What are you seeing, Mackenzie?
Yeah, Kai, Maxine and I are both pouring through this, and counts 2 and 4 are really relating to these 2 vacation homes in Florida that Marilyn Mosby purchased. Now, going through this, it's interesting because according to this indictment, now this is the federal government's allegations against the top prosecutor in Baltimore. They say that she did not disclose that $45,000 tax lien that was placed on her home that she owns with City Council President Nick Mosby here in Baltimore. We know that that tax lien has since been paid off. That was paid off last summer, but the story about that itself has changed. But according to this indictment, she did not disclose that tax lien when she purchased both of these properties. Now, the counts are all intertwined. I know that Maxine Stryker is going through 1 and 3. Those are really dealing with this COVID CARES Act money and the applications that Marilyn made for that money. But according to this, it also says that if Marilyn Mosby is convicted of these crimes, especially for counts 2 and 4, again, lying on the application for the mortgage, according to the federal government, if she's found guilty of those, the federal government will seek to seize those properties. Now, we also know that one of the homes that in Kissimmee, Florida, she sold, and I want to walk you through the timeline of that because on September 10th of 2021, Maryland's attorney, A. Scott Bolden, met with prosecutors and investigators in this case to talk about what he told reporters a few months ago was what he thought was a perjury case. We now know that that has come true. So remember that date, September 10th, 2021. 7 days later, Marilyn Mosby listed that property in Florida for sale for $725,000. November 2nd, that home sold for $696,000. We had done extensive reporting about that home sale a few months ago, and the person who bought that home is from Baltimore County. We're still going through the details of that, but according to this indictment, the federal government will seek to get any sort of property or even monetary damages if she is convicted of the 2 and 4 counts of these in this indictment. So even though the home has since been sold, the federal government will still seek to retrieve any sort of monetary value from Mosby if she is convicted. Kai and Mary.
All right, Mackenzie, thank you. We are going to bring in former federal prosecutor Thiru Vignarajah right now. Thiru, we asked you earlier just sort of to look at what is most surprising to you in this indictment. You've had a chance to go over it. What stands out?
You know, what I think is really striking is how big a deal this distraction in Florida is as a centerpiece of this indictment. This really is about the fraud, the alleged fraud on those loan documents. Whenever you apply for a mortgage, you fill out some papers to get that loan from the bank. There seems to be 2 different issues here. Number one, it is alleged that she failed to include certain debts that she had to the federal government. And a bank wants to know what debts you might have so they can evaluate whether or not you're a good credit risk for giving that mortgage. The second thing that she indicated was that this was going to be a secondary home and not a rental home. And that has to do with what interest rate you get. So you'll get a lower interest rate if it's your second personal home as opposed to if it's for a business, it's for a rental property. So that is also really material. But that all has to do with this property in Florida. A lot of people wondered what role that played in this federal investigation. And this purchase of a home for the purposes of another business appears not only to have been a distraction from the core job she was charged with doing, it also appears to be a source of significant legal challenges as revealed in this indictment.
Thuroo, we asked about this earlier. So far, we have not seen the name of Nick Mosby, who's the city council president and also Ms. Mosby's husband, mentioned anywhere in this indictment. But we also know that both of them have been under federal investigation.
Yeah, it's a good question as to what exactly Mr. Mosby faces. Nick and Marilyn obviously filed their tax returns together. There's evidence that these tax liens and tax debts were with respect to both of them. But the affirmative acts that are alleged in here, at least in this indictment, again, we don't know what else is out there, and it's not frankly appropriate to speculate. These documents deal with specific acts that Marilyn did. Marilyn is the one that would have signed those loan papers. She's the one that signed the suggestion that there had been a COVID-related hardship with respect to her job. Those things are unique to her. So whether or not Nick Mosby has separate liability for separate acts that he had, the fact that they're merely married does not mean that both of them are are guilty of a crime.
You have been in the federal prosecutor's office before. What is the process if you are indicted by a federal grand jury? What does Ms. Mosby face today and in the next several days?
Yeah, there's a pretty standard process. In the next couple of days, there'll be an arraignment. She will be expected to appear in federal court and plead guilty or not guilty. Typically, if there was going to be a plea, that would have been negotiated in advance, and this would never have come out like this. So she will presumably plead not guilty. Then there'll be a discovery schedule where prosecutors provide documentary evidence to the defense attorney so they can review that. Then there'll be a trial schedule that is set. There'll be a first trial date, and in federal court, unlike city court, those trial dates are pretty reliable trial dates. But that could be 6 months, 9 months, a year, 18 months from now. We're at the first inning of a doubleheader. This is a very, very long process and a very long road ahead.
All right, Thuroo Vignarajah, please stand by. We're going to ask you to stay here in the studio if you don't mind. We'll come back to you for some more questioning. In the meantime, we want to bring in Fox 45's Maxine Stryker, also going through this federal indictment. Maxine?
And Kai, I've been focusing just on those two perjury counts from the indictment. That's count 1 and count 3. Both have to do with this financial hardship withdrawal loan, of which Mosby made 2 in 2020. The first was in May, when Mosby requested a one-time withdrawal of $40,000 from her City of Baltimore employee retirement account, which under the CARES allowed her to take up a loan of up to $100,000. Again, she requested $40,000 the first time in May. She falsely certified on that application that she had experienced some type of hardship during the COVID pandemic that year, whether it was she was quarantined, furloughed, or laid off, having issues with child care, or her business had shut down. She had said on those forms that she had experienced some type of hardship, but the indictment says she had in fact not experienced in any of those things in 2020. Now, on May 29th, she received an electronic transfer of $36,000. We know, according to the indictment, that she used that money for a down payment for a home in Kissimmee, Florida, which she purchased in September. Now, according to the third count, this is the second count of perjury, count 3 in the indictment. In December 29th of 2020, she again submitted a request for money, this time requesting a withdrawal of $50,000 from that retirement account, again saying that she had experienced some type of COVID hardship on those forms. 2 days later, on December 31st, she was then transferred $45,000, which the indictment says she used for a down payment on a home in Longboat Key, Florida. This is a second vacation home of hers. Total, if you add up both count 1 and count 3, the money that she received was $81,000 of COVID relief money, all of which we now know she allegedly used for down payments on these 2 homes in Kissimmee and Longboat Key, Florida. Now, counts 2 and 4, which are for false statement on a loan application that Mackenzie Frost has been telling you about, claim that she allegedly did not disclose tax liens on those forms. We know she has since sold one of those vacation homes, the one in Kissimmee, Florida. Now, the indictment also says that Mosby's gross salary in 2020 actually increased from 2019, again, citing the fact that she could not have experienced that hardship that she said on those forms, when in fact that year she had made over $247,000. Kai and Mary.
All right, Maxine, thank you. Now, this isn't the first time the Mosby's financial dealings have come under scrutiny. In October of 2020, we learned that the IRS placed a $45,000 lien on the couple's property for unpaid taxes. The same month, when Nick Mosby was a candidate, Fox 45 uncovered a $100,000 discrepancy in his finance report. And in February, an inspector general investigation into Marilyn Mosby's travel revealed she wrote off thousands of dollars in expenses for 3 companies that weren't operating. And it was later revealed she used campaign funds to pay her personal attorney.
And as we've mentioned, the Mosbys closed on a nearly $500,000 condo in southern Florida last month. As the Baltimore Brew first reported, Marilyn Mosby purchased this 2-bedroom property near Sarasota. The sale was made official in February, just weeks before the couple was informed of the federal investigation. Marilyn Mosby, also the owner of a second home in Kissimmee, Florida, worth $545,000, which she purchased in September of last year. Now, so far, the Mosbys have only responded to the investigation through their attorney, A. Scott Bolden. He issued a statement saying the Mosbys' progressive policies have made them unfair targets. He denied any wrongdoing on the part of his clients and called the investigation a witch hunt. And in the last hour, we spoke with the attorney Kurt Nachman about the indictment. Here's what he had to say.
Absolutely shocking. I have not had an opportunity to read everything. I'm on page 4, and the materials that I've read so far are quite disturbing. Apparently, she had applied for distribution from a retirement account, and in doing so, she certified that she suffered financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, when in fact she still maintained her entire salary as the sitting state's attorney for Baltimore City of almost $250,000 a year. I'm not sure what else is in here. It looks like there are several counts. False statement on a loan application. So something from several years back, 2014, 2016. And then there's some issues with the vacation home that we've previously heard about.
All right, that was attorney Kurt Nachman. He once worked in the city state's attorney's office. Now we want you to join in the conversation. Should Marilyn Mosby step down because of today's federal indictment? Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in. And our coverage of this big breaking news just getting started. We have a team of reporters working on different angles right now, and more importantly, looking at what comes next. Stay with Fox 45 News for our live continuing coverage.
Let's get a first check of your forecast right now. You're taking a live look outside as a very mild Thursday comes to an end. But tonight we are tracking some big changes headed our way. Meteorologist Jasmine Lomax is here with that. Jasmine.
Thanks, Kai. We've been keeping close watch on the HD radar. We're looking at a series of fronts and that low pressure system that could lead to wintry weather as we head into late this weekend. Now, here in our region, we are tracking a cold front that's going to move toward western Maryland. That could lead to a few snow showers and rain showers overnight, but for the rest of us, we do stay mainly dry. We're also keeping watch on this low pressure system over Canada. That's what's going to be that winter weather maker for us. We're talking the chance for snow and a little bit of rain. Now, that low pressure system is expected to move across the plains, eventually toward the southeast. You can already see some snow to the north of that low pressure system. Now, depending on the center of that system, that's going to largely determine some of the impacts that we could see, along with how much snow is possible in our area. So make sure that you are staying weather alert as we move forward and continue to track this event. I'll have more details on just how much snow we could see, and I'll break down the timing coming up in my full Weather Authority forecast.
All right, Jasmine, thank you. And put the power of the Weather Authority Storm Center in your hands. Download the free WBFF Weather Authority app for your smartphone. Use our powerful Doppler radar to follow storms to your street. Go to your app store and search for WBFF to get started.
We have more coverage on Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby being indicted by a federal grand jury. Stay with us. We're back in just 2 minutes.
Fox 45 News, winner of 18 2021 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other local news stations combined.
And thank you for staying with us. We are back now with our live breaking news. After months of a federal investigation, charges have now been filed against Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. She is now facing 4 federal charges of perjury and making a false statement on a loan application. And we're going to bring in political commentator Armstrong Williams. First, let's get your reaction to this indictment against Marilyn Mosby.
You know, it's actually very sad and disturbing. Your former mayor, Catherine Pugh, is in jail. I mean, you've had this history. You ask yourself, why would someone as bright and as accomplished as the state attorney, Mrs. Mosby, with falsely certified that she met at least one of the qualifications for the distribution as defined under the CARES Act, specifically that she experienced adverse financial consequences stemming from the coronavirus as a result of being quarantined, furloughed or laid off, or having reduced work hours, or being unable to work due to the lack of child care and the closing of reduction of hours of her business. And no, we're not true. I mean, she's making $250,000 a year. She's experienced no hardship. In fact, her salary has only increased. I mean, knowing people out here who are suffering and are devastated by this coronavirus and by the variants, and then you hear these stories of people exploiting the situation, and you've got someone who's a state attorney, who's a lawyer, a person in a position of integrity and trust, and with all the things that she's got is going for her and the success, she has to reduce herself to ask for $36,000 as a distribution from a retirement account by using false statements and then claiming that her main resident was in Kissimmee, Florida, and it was going to be a main resident. And then a few months later, she rents it out. I mean, this woman's a lawyer. She understands the law. I mean, it's very difficult to have sympathy, empathy for her, because there are so many people who are struggling and dire straits from this supply chain breakdown, from the fact that people are experiencing high costs at the pump and in grocery stores, and yet you have somebody making $250,000 a year, and you're just going to blatantly lie, no respect for the rule of law. It's very difficult to feel sorry for. I'm sorry. It's a sad situation for Baltimore. It's just another person that goes to show that their personal wallet, their personal needs, their personal greed rises above the people that they serve.
Armstrong, she, of course, as you know, is innocent until proven guilty. But how does this reflect on the citizens of Baltimore, whom she was elected to represent?
Listen, people every day, they're not in those rooms when they're making decisions about whether or not you're going to deceive on a loan or whether you're going to take advantage of the CARES Act. They place you in these positions because they trust you. They trust that you will have integrity, you will have character, and that you would not embarrass the people who put you in that position in the first place. People are flawed. People go to Congress saying they're going to make all these changes. They go there and all they want to do is get rich. And you know, this is what we've become, and we've become a nation of greed. Enough is never enough. And I know you say she's innocent until proven guilty, but I got to tell you something. This indictment, which is true, says something entirely different. It makes you wonder about her judgment and about her character. And while I feel sorry for her kids and her families members that are so proud of her, I mean, it's not just what she did was dumb. It was just absolutely unethical. It was just not true. And it was not even necessary, over $36,000 and having 2 vacation homes. I mean, come on, guys.
I want to ask about what you think the fallout is, the implications for the office of the city-state AG. Like, what will happen to just the credibility now of that office, city-state's attorney?
Well, you know, she's an individual. If you follow WBFF, Fox 45, they've been covering Mosby for quite some time. There have been these allegations that WBFF is racist and they're out to get Mosby, and it's about her race. And then what we find out, the things that are being reported by the media, who felt they had a responsibility to report the facts. And this is what happens when you report the facts. Eventually, the truth comes out. This is not WBFF, Fox 45, or some other media outlet reporting about Marilyn Mosby. This is a federal grand jury that returned an indictment today charging her on federal charges of perjury and making false mortgage applications relating to the purchases of 2 vacation homes in Florida. So you've got to ask yourself, you don't want to always believe the media. Many people trust our credibility, but in this case, they got it right. I mean, she had flaws, and this is only an indication that what else may be going on. And it's also a lesson to anybody who people elect and give their trust. I mean, you've got to put the people first, not vacation homes, not trying to get money from the CARES Act when other people need it most. It's not about you getting rich. It's not about for you enhancing your lifestyle. You're there to serve the people. And as long as you serve the people, your personal agenda and you're creating and building your personal wealth should not be first, second, or third. The bottom line, if you want to do those things, then leave office, allow somebody else to run that will represent the people, do the work of the people, do the bidding of the people, and protect the integrity of that office. And she became very self-absorbed, and her deeds caught up with her. That's just the bottom line. Nobody wants to hear it. It's just a fact. And it's for all of us, not just for Mosby. It's a lesson for all of us that eventually what is done in dark is going to come to light, and you can make allegations and say that people are misrepresenting you, they're lying on you. But the truth came out, and this indictment, and you have no idea where this indictment may lead. It's opened up Pandora's box. It's embarrassing for the city. What she should do is do the gracious thing, resign. She violated the trust of the people, and the people don't need to go through this this circus for her over the next several months as they get to the truth.
All right. Armstrong Williams, a political commentator. Armstrong, thank you as always.
My pleasure.
And stay with us. We will have more coverage of the indictment of Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. We are back in 2 minutes with more coverage.
Right. It's just not an indictment.
If you are just joining us, Fox 45 News is on top of some major breaking news in our city today. Federal charges have been leveled against Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. She is now facing federal charges of perjury and making false statements on a loan application.
Let's bring Mackenzie Frost back into this discussion right now. Mackenzie, earlier today you were speaking with a woman who says she's a victim of Mosby's crime prosecution.
Yeah, Kai and Mary, we've been talking about the city state's attorney Marilyn Mosby for a few days this week, not because of this indictment that we are just learning about, but because of the plea deal that her office gave to an arsonist who pled guilty. His name is Luther Trent. He talked to me earlier this week, described how he committed the crime, and he himself said that the plea agreement that he got, he thought was too lenient, and he was fully expecting to spend some time in jail. We heard from one of the victims, Alexis, a few weeks ago. Today, another victim who was at the home at the time of this fire is speaking out. Her story paired with Alexis's story and now Luther Trent's story all compounds into this conversation. We're talking about the city state's attorney Marilyn Mosby's prosecution policies, and today we pressed the mayor about what's going on.
Kept her stuff popping.
A scene burned into the memory for the women inside.
I heard someone screaming outside my window. The back is on fire. The back is on fire.
Going by just her first name, Sema, in her bedroom the night of the arson in May 2021.
We just realized how close we were to losing our lives.
Luther Trent describing how he started the inferno.
I went to the side of the house, start pouring gasoline on the side of the house, and lit the side of the house on fire.
If anybody thinks it's an appropriate sentence to send a person who is convicted, who pled guilty, who admitted to first-degree arson with a slap on the wrist, that's just not right. 3 attempted homicide charges dropped. Trent pleading guilty to 1 arson charge, now out on supervision. After accepting the deal, after the judge rendered a verdict of guilty, was the first time that the court or anyone heard from the victims.
Through Vignaraja, former prosecutor, now representing Alexis and Sema, filing this motion looking to overturn the plea agreement. Vignaraja says the judge did not listen to the victim impact statements before accepting the plea that sent Trent home.
She bound herself to a plea before ever hearing from the victims.
The prosecutor's office is saying that the plea deal is due to Luther Trent's lack of a criminal record. I just couldn't believe that, a system put in place that's supposed to protect the citizens would, do something like this because of reasons that are still unknown.
Mosby's office telling Fox 45 News in a statement, based on the facts of the case and Trent's lack of criminal history, the plea agreement was offered and fell within the sentencing guidelines. The admission of Trent, who says pleas like his own send the wrong message to a city grappling with a crime crisis.
That tells anybody that, I can go shoot somebody, or I can go attempt to shoot somebody, and I'll be completely fine.
Igniting a political firestorm.
This is the guy who set the house on fire.
This is the perpetrator.
Miss Marilyn Mosby is not protecting women, females in our city.
Now we even have criminals saying that they're too soft on criminals.
Today, we spoke with a guy who says that he admitted to committing arson. Mayor Brandon Scott facing questions about the plea deal. Do you think that the city state's attorney's office policies are working, or have you lost confidence in her ability to send the correct message to Baltimore?
Well, as you know, Mackenzie, I don't believe in blanket responses like that.
He said that his plea agreement was too soft, though. He thinks he should be in jail.
Listen, he has his opinion. I don't know the case. I haven't seen the video that you're talking about. People who commit serious crime should have to face serious time.
Not a ringing endorsement for the city's top prosecutor. I sent questions to the city council members and leaders of the Baltimore City delegation in Annapolis today, asking, do you believe City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby's office is creating a safer Baltimore? Do you still have confidence in State's Attorney Mosby? No answers from those leaders, while the victims in the case...
I'm just still very appalled by this. I believe it's also due to some political agenda by the prosecutor.
It doesn't seem that the goals of justice have been served here. It just seems like it's part of some political game.
Look to the top prosecutor in Baltimore for answers and justice. Now, obviously, there are a lot of questions here with this case. There is some case law to back up this latest motion filing on behalf of the victims, and we'll continue to follow those developments as they happen. Live in Baltimore, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Now, in the quest for accountability, Fox 45 News took our latest investigation to Governor Larry Hogan. Here's what he had to say.
Now we even have criminals saying that they're too soft on criminals and that they should have gotten more time. I mean, that's what we've come to. I hope he'll come down and testify in favor of my bills. But it was outrageous. It's just one example of what happens every day. People aren't being held accountable, and we're trying to fix that.
The governor has reintroduced two crime bills, the Violent Firearms Offender Act and the Judicial Transparency Act. Of those two plans, the Judicial Transparency Act calls for transparency and accountability in the judicial system.
And now we want you to join in the conversation. Should Marilyn Mosby step down because of the indictment? Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
It's 5:31, and we continue to follow the indictment, the federal indictment of Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. This is a look at all the charges she's facing, 4 in total. She's facing 2 counts of perjury. Both have to do with lying on applications for COVID relief money. That led to her receiving $81,000, which she allegedly used for down payments on homes in Florida. She's also facing 2 counts of false statements on loan applications. Those claim that she didn't disclose a tax lien on a mortgage application.
We're going to bring in former federal prosecutor Thuru Vignaraja. Thuru, this investigation, this federal investigation, has been about a year. Fox 45 News looked at the subpoena in March of last year. And the feds were looking at all sorts of things with the Mosbys, their bank statements, credit cards, loan documents, but they were also subpoenaing the campaign treasurer and churches in our city. Lots of things they were looking at, and they come down to what some may say is a technicality. Is that fair? Will that be part of a defense?
Look, I think there's a legal dimension to this and there's a political dimension to this. The political dimension is that there are people that have always supported Marilyn Mosby that will defend her to the grave. And those folks are going to say, this was a witch hunt. This was a federal investigation gone amok. And look at all the things that they looked at. And here's the small number of things that they've actually indicted her on. The legal perspective is that prosecutors and federal agents often will cast a wide net and focus on what they term the most readily provable offenses. Because the reality is that these are very serious offenses. The perjury convictions would result in a 5-year maximum sentence for each of those counts. The false claims on loan applications has a maximum sentence of 30 years. Federal prosecutors are oftentimes careful about bringing just a narrow set of charges where even if they have evidence on a broader set of materials. So politically, I think there's going to be people that take that opinion and defend her on that ground. But legally, I think at the end of the day, she's now facing very serious federal charges for which she has to answer. And if she is convicted, she will likely have to go to prison, and she will certainly lose her law license if that happens.
Theroux, you are a federal prosecutor, and you know how the feds operate. They're very patient. They take their time, and they usually gather an enormous amount of evidence before they bring charges public. What kind of defense will Ms. Mosby have to mount?
Look, I was a federal prosecutor, and we took a lot of time to dot our I's and cross our T's. For an indictment like this, a summary of the evidence would have been sent to Maine Justice, the Justice Department down in D.C. Somebody pretty high up would have reviewed that memorandum of summarizing the evidence and would have signed off on this indictment before the U.S. Attorney in Maryland made the ultimate decision. So this is something that she should be very worried about. I am sure her defense attorney has advised her that federal prosecutors do not even publicize these investigations unless and until they have something. And they certainly don't present indictments to grand juries until they believe they have rock solid evidence. The standard is overwhelming evidence of guilt that was readily provable to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the federal standard for bringing an indictment.
We know trials in the city are on hold right now because of the pandemic. Could any current cases be in jeopardy because the city-state's attorney is indicted?
I don't think it has a material effect on the legal status of any current indictment. In some respects, she signs off on those indictments because of her sovereign authority as the state's attorney. I don't think the status of those changes. But the symbolic feature of the fact that the state's attorney, who's supposed to be your chief law enforcement officer, has been charged with very serious federal crimes, I think that is going to have a demoralizing effect on the prosecutors in her office, and it's going to have a distracting effect on her attention. She's supposed to be looking and overseeing plea deals. She's supposed to be overseeing charging decisions. She's supposed to be working on partnerships with federal agents and the Attorney General's office to bring cases. That has got to be a source of real concern for the city. It's not like things are going well right now. We have the most violent crime scene that we have seen in years. That ought to be her focus, and it's going to be hard to keep her eye on the ball when she has a very serious federal indictment pending now before her.
All right, Theroux Vignarajah, former federal prosecutor, thank you for that insight. We will continue to have you stand by as we work our way through the indictment and what happened today.
We're going to go to John Deedy, political analyst, right now. Before we do that, we've got a statement to read here. We have reaction coming in. This is from Ivan Bates, who's running for Baltimore City State's Attorney. In a tweet, he said, quote, "The job of a state's attorney is to uphold justice in our city. A federal indictment of a sitting state's attorney is very concerning, but everybody deserves their day in court. Like all citizens of Baltimore, I'll be curious to learn more about the facts of this case," end quote.
Let's go to John Deedy now, political analyst. John, I want to ask you about the political fallout here for this office, for Marilyn Mosby. She has been in office since 2014, served 8 years or so, been reelected, even with controversy. What do you think the implication, the fallout is for her office and for her?
It doesn't help at all her office with the fallout because people are already suspicious of prosecutors and criminal justice in general. So this is not going to help the reputation of the state's attorney's office, which really has been in decline really since the day she took office.
Right. And John, where do you see this going publicly? This case we're talking about here. Obviously, we mentioned again, Theroux Vignarajah is in the studio, and he mentioned she's innocent until proven guilty. But there's a cloud over the city today.
Definitely that. And the questions are going to be this. Only a few years ago, Catherine Pugh was accused of crimes. She later pled guilty to them. But while she was being accused, the Baltimore City Council members and City Council president unanimously said she had to resign. The question is, are they going to take a similar stand, or are they going to have some fear of the Mosbys and say, you know what, we need to back off this thing? I'm going to be very curious what City Council members do as far as in a situation like this. The other thing to keep in mind is Article 5, Section 11 of the Maryland Constitution, which basically says that if Ms. Mosby has to resign, that the city judges in Baltimore City get together and select a replacement. This has happened once before in 1970 when they selected Howard Cardin, the brother of Ben Cardin, as a replacement for Baltimore City State's Attorney. Later that year, he lost the Democratic primary. So there's a lot of interesting political dynamics here. I think that it's going to be interesting how things play out the next few days with political support and public support. What do the candidates running for various offices, such as governor and also comptroller, feel about this? How are the candidates running for attorney general, the wife of Martin O'Malley and also Anthony Brown? How do they react to a situation like this?
Not to mention that our city council president is Nick Mosby, married to Marilyn Mosby. I wanted to ask John, former police commissioner Ed Norris was indicted years ago for a very similar charge, sort of a technicality on a tax form. He went to prison for a year, I think, after pleading that out. What do you think of the feds then honing in on these kind of cases to get police commissioners or state's attorneys or other public officials?
It's an easy conviction because when you sign those documents, above your signature is the statement under penalty of perjury. It's an easy conviction for the feds, and that's going to be a big problem. And Ed Norris was charged with a variety of things, and in the end, and I read a book about the situation where basically his attorney said, all the other charges we think we can beat, but we can't beat this charge because it's your name signed on this form. And he ended up taking a plea deal, and he did go to federal prison for 6 months. And I think that this is going to be a difficult road. I think that what Marilyn Mosby is going to need to do is hire an experienced federal attorney who's used to defending people in federal court. The current person she has, Scott Bolton, this guy's more PR than anything. She needs experienced people who know how to work with the system to perhaps negotiate a plea deal. You don't want amateurs in a situation like this, especially when your freedom is at stake.
All right. Political analyst John Dede always giving us perspective. We appreciate that, John. Thank you.
Thank you. And our coverage of this breaking news just getting started. We have our team of reporters working on different angles right now, and more importantly, looking at what comes next. Stay with Fox 45 News for our live continuing coverage. We have more coverage in just 2 minutes.
I didn't really like Full House.
I mean, I didn't.
It was okay. It was corny.
That much.
If you're just joining us right now, we continue to follow the indictment of Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. This is a look at the charges that she's facing. 4 in total. She's facing 2 counts of perjury. Both have to do with lying on applications for COVID relief money. Now, that led to her receiving $81,000, which she allegedly used for down payments on homes in Florida. She's also facing 2 counts of false statements on loan applications. Those claim she didn't disclose a tax lien on a mortgage application.
Maxine Stryker is here with us. Maxine, you're also poring over the court documents. Tell us more about what you found.
Yeah, Mary and Kai, there's a lot to unpack here. As you mentioned, counts 1 and 3 both related to perjury, to a May 2020 COVID-19 financial hardship withdrawal loan. That was the first count. And to break that down for you, the indictment says in May, Mosby requested a one-time payment withdrawal of $40,000 from her City of Baltimore employee retirement account under the CARES Act, which allowed her to withdraw up to $100,000. She falsely certified and signed under the penalty of perjury on these forms that she was experiencing some type of adverse financial consequences stemming from the COVID pandemic. The indictment says, though, she had not experienced any adverse consequences from the pandemic. Then again, on May 29th, she received the first of 2 electronic fund transfers, this one for $36,000. And according to the indictment, she used that money to put a down payment on a vacation home in Kissimmee, Florida, which she then purchased in September. Now, according to the third count, again, this is a perjury count, she submitted a second request for money, this time on December 29th, at the end of 2020, for $50,000, again from her City of Baltimore employee retirement account. Again, by signing the form, she certified under penalty of perjury that she was qualified for this COVID relief money. On December 31st, 2 days after she submitted the request, she received another transfer of money, this time for $45,000. According to the indictment, she used that money to put a down payment on a second vacation home in Florida, this one in Longboat Key. If you add all that money up from both counts, she was awarded $81,000 of COVID relief money, all of which she used for down payments on those 2 Florida vacation homes. Now, counts 2 and 4, which are for false statements on a loan application, allege that she did not disclose tax liens. Now, all of this being said, in those perjury accounts, according to the indictment, Mosby's gross salary in 2020 was actually more than the year before. We reached out to Mosby's office for comment. We have yet to hear back. We also had Mackenzie Frost. She has reached out to her lawyer as well, and we have not heard back from them tonight. But we are hearing a lot of reaction on social media to this indictment of Mosby. One from Ivan Bates, who is running for Baltimore City State's Attorney, potentially against Mosby, who has not announced if she was going to be running for the office. He tweeted that the job of a state's attorney is to uphold justice in our city. A federal indictment of a sitting state's attorney is very concerning, but everyone deserves their day in court. He says, like all citizens of Baltimore, he'll be curious to learn more about the facts of this case. Now, she will have her day in court. A date has not been set yet. Again, there's a lot more to learn as all of this unfolds, but that's what we're getting from those first 2 perjury accounts, indictments here tonight. Mary and Kai?
Maxine, thank you. This isn't the first time the Mosby's financial dealings have come under the microscope. In October 2020, we learned the IRS placed a $45,000 lien on the couple's property for unpaid taxes. The same month, when Nick Mosby was a candidate, Fox 45 uncovered a $100,000 discrepancy in his finance report. In February, an inspector general investigation into Marilyn Mosby's travel revealed she wrote off thousands of dollars in expenses for 3 companies that weren't operating. And it was later revealed she used campaign funds to pay her personal attorney.
And as we have mentioned, the Mosbys closed on a nearly $500,000 condo in southern Florida last month. As the Baltimore Brew first reported, Marilyn Mosby purchased this 2-bedroom property near Sarasota. The sale was made official in February, just weeks before the couple was informed of the federal investigation. She is also the owner of a second home in Kissimmee, Florida, worth $545,000, which she purchased in September of last year.
And let's go now to Andy Alperstein, a defense attorney and former prosecutor himself. Andy, what's your reaction to all of this?
This is crazy. I mean, I guess we all knew and heard things over the last period of time, but here we are. We have courts are closed for jury trials. Things are backed up. The murder rate is, off the charts. There's a crisis of public safety in Baltimore. Everybody's talking about it. And the prosecutor, as one of your former guests said, the prosecutor is supposed to be working with the state, local, federal law enforcement agencies to protect us, to keep us safe, to bring cases together. How many times have we watched your news where we've seen the U.S. attorney and the state's attorney and other law enforcement partners standing together, talking about what they're doing to make us safe? They're bringing a case. They're building public confidence in the criminal justice system, which is not only important for all of us, but it's important for the wrongdoers, for the people that are going to break the law. They need to know that there's confidence in these public officials, especially the state's attorney. The state's attorney needs to be ethical, transparent, honest, and all these charges raise the question of what's going on here.
What do you think it will be like in her office for these city prosecutors who do work hard and are building cases? What's it going to be like in the next several days and months ahead?
I cannot even imagine the morale in that office. I mean, it's already hard enough. They are. I'm working with those folks every day. They're doing their best to put cases together. Their office is going to. They're going to have a hard time. They're going to have a hard time. They already have a hard job.
Yeah, Andy, we know a number of those prosecutors have left, and Fox 45, I hosted a roundtable with some officials recently, including Janice Bledsoe, out of that office. Do you expect to see any defections from that office?
Well, they have a very high rate of people leaving. I mean, we've all observed that throughout the Mosby administration, and candidly, I lose track every week of how many people are leaving for different reasons. But I can't imagine, like I said, that the morale would be any good. I mean, what's going on in the courts right now is that the courts are closed for jury trials. So the most serious people that are in the most serious trouble, who are innocent until proven guilty, are sitting in jail, many of them. They can't get a jury trial because the courts, all the state courts are closed, and the federal courts are not having, when I say closed, they're not having jury trials, and their operations are limited. And that's through February 8th right now. Most people think that's going to get extended because the Omicron situation's not resolving quickly. And it interrupts people's lives. Now you've got leadership questions. And, it goes on the other side, too. When you're talking about criminal defendants and what we're doing here in the criminal justice system, what we're doing is we're trying to correct behavior. Well, that's what this is all about. Now, some people get warehoused and they have to go for life for a really long time, but most of it is correcting behavior. And if the criminals don't have confidence that it's a firm and honest system, it actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what happens.
And real quickly, I just want to get your reaction to the actual charges that Ms. Mosby is facing. What do you think about the case that the feds built?
Well, I've had cases against these prosecutors, and they're very good. They have a very high conviction rate. This obviously has been studied and evaluated and investigated for a very long time. Records cases are usually some of the easier cases to prove. Now, she's innocent until proven guilty, but it's going to be interesting because she's not required to leave office because she's indicted. A federal grand jury found probable cause, but that doesn't mean that she's convicted. She's not required to leave. The Attorney General of Maryland can petition the state Senate for her removal. That's the process in the law. And as the former guest John just indicated, then the circuit court judges would vote on a replacement. A majority vote of the circuit court judges of the jurisdiction would then put in a replacement. Now, she could take a leave of absence and let one of her deputies or somebody else run the office. That might be a good idea because at least people will know that the decisions are not being made by somebody who by their nature is indicted with an honesty-related crime. Let's think about what false statement and perjury are. They're honesty-related crimes. It's very difficult to deal with prosecutors if you have concerns about honesty.
A weighty and sad day for the city of Baltimore. Andy Alperstein, thank you so much for your thoughts and your perspective tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, we want you at home to join the conversation. Should Marilyn Mosby step down because of this indictment? So far, 94% of you say yes. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. You can continue to weigh in throughout the night. And our coverage of this breaking news is just getting started. We have our reporters and team of analysts standing by. Stay with Fox 45 News for our live continuing coverage. We're back in 2 minutes. If you are just joining us, Fox 45 News is on top of some major breaking news today. Federal charges have been leveled against Baltimore City State's attorney, Marilyn Mosby. She is now facing federal charges of perjury and making a false statement on a loan application.
This is a look at all the charges that she's facing. 4 in total. She's facing 2 counts of perjury. Both have to do with lying on applications for COVID relief money. That led to her receiving $81,000, which she allegedly used for down payments on homes in Florida. She's also facing 2 counts of false statements on loan applications. Those claim she didn't disclose a tax lien on a mortgage application.
Our coverage of the breaking news is just getting started. Stay with Fox 45 News for live continuing coverage on air and online at foxbaltimore.com.
Well, we are keeping a close watch on the future scan. We've got our next weather maker moving through, and that does include winter weather. Notice we've got a cold front passing overnight, and that will lead to breezy weather tomorrow, but temperatures still in the 40s. But then we're watching a low pressure system move across the plains and eventually toward the southeast. That's what's going to be that winter weather maker, bringing snow to the area as we head into Sunday. So notice as we continue on, that snow does move toward our area Sunday afternoon, changing to rain by the night, and that could lead to roadway hazards by Monday morning. Tonight, though, we stay dry with temperatures in the 30s. Tomorrow, 40s once again, but then the cold weather returns on Saturday. 20s, 30s on Sunday with the chance for snow and maybe a wintry mix after that. 40s on Monday, and we stay mainly dry as we head into the rest of the week. Back to you.
Jasmine, thank you. We have more wall-to-wall coverage of the indictment of Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. Stay with us. We are back in just 2 minutes.
Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Got me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Guys!
Live from WBFF TV in Baltimore, this is breaking news.
It is 6 o'clock and we are live with some major breaking news. After months of federal investigation, charges have now been leveled against Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. She's facing federal charges of perjury and making a false statement on a loan application. And we're continuing our team coverage at this hour, beginning with reporter Maxine Stryker, who's been poring over the indictment. Maxine, get us up to date about what you have learned.
Well, Mary, we're taking a closer look at counts 1 and 3, which are perjury related, as you mentioned, for allegedly lying on forms for COVID relief money and then using that money to put towards down payments for vacation homes in Florida. To break it all down, this first happened in May when Mosby requested a one-time withdrawal of $40,000 of COVID relief money. She falsely certified under penalty of perjury. She signed the documents that she was experiencing adverse financial consequences from the COVID-19 pandemic, but the indictment says she had not, in fact, experienced any of the things that she had checked the box for on those forms. On May 29th of 2020, she received an electronic transfer of $36,000, and according to the indictment, she used that money to put towards a down payment for a vacation home in Kissimmee, Florida, which she then purchased in September. Now, according to the third count, which again is a count of perjury, she submitted a second request for money in December, this time for $50,000. On December 31st, then, 2 days after submitting that request, she was receiving an electronic transfer again of $45,000. This money she used to put for a down payment towards another home in Florida, this one in Longboat Key. And again, she certified on these forms under penalty of perjury that she was experiencing hardship from COVID-19. Now, total, if you add both of those up, she was awarded $81,000 of COVID relief money, all of which she used for those down payments for vacation properties. According to the indictment, Mosby's gross salary in 2020 was actually more than the year before. Upwards of $247,000. Now, we reached out to Mosby's office for comment. We have not heard back tonight. She will, of course, have her day in court. That date just not set at this time. Reporting in studio, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. We will get more on the specifics of the indictment in just a few minutes. But first, joining us live is former city prosecutor Kurt Nachman. Kurt, thanks again for joining us. You have had time to really look at this indictment. Tell us what stands out to you.
What stood out to me was my belief that this indictment was laser focused on targeting crimes that the federal prosecutors would easily be able to prove, and it's related to essentially two financial transactions: the two withdrawals from her early withdrawals from her retirement account, and then in turn the money was used for down payments on two different rental properties and/or vacation properties. I think that the prosecutors were very, very focused. There's not a lot of information here about any other tax issues, any other tax liens, any other outstanding monies that are due. It's really laser focused on things that are very easy to prove in federal court.
What is the immediate impact on Marilyn Mosby, her office, and what happens next to her personally?
I definitely think that there's going to be a major loss of confidence both within the office and on the bench and in the surrounding community in the criminal justice system. It's interesting. I was reviewing some of the Baltimore City Charter laws and the City Code of Ethics. And if the City Code of Ethics finds that there's a criminal violation, they would actually refer the case to Marilyn Mosby. So I'm not really sure how she's going to be able to prosecute herself, but it seems like a conflict of interest. And you also need to bear in mind that Charlton Howard, the Office of the State Prosecutor, is still out there. There could potentially be state charges that would be looming as a result of the wrapping up of this federal investigation.
It is complicated. All right, Kurt Nachman, thank you so much for your perspective tonight.
Thank you.
Now, in addition to the legal aspects of this case, there's also a significant political impact of the indictment. Fox 45 spoke with political analyst John Deedy not long ago about that aspect. The election for the city state's attorney's office is about 6 months away. Do you believe she could still effectively run if she's not, for instance, convicted on these charges? We still have to see how the legal process plays out. But the other part of this question is, looking at what's happening today, do you believe that she even should run?
I don't believe she should run. This is a very serious matter. The other thing is, as far as whether she can run, technically, legally, she can run. The issue will be how voters will react to a situation like this. Will they say, this is unacceptable? Or will they take the attitude DC voters took in the 1990s, who, after Marion Barry was arrested and went to jail, elected a mayor just a short time later? There's one thing I want to point out on these federal documents. When you sign a federal document, a federal loan document, above the space above your signature, there is something that basically says under penalty of perjury. So once you sign that document, you're basically saying that if these things come out untrue, you've already acknowledged that you're admitting to fraud. So she has a very serious problem there. There's also one other thing I will point out. If she is forced to resign, what happens is the Baltimore City court judges get together and they select a new acting state's attorney. Now, the last time this happened was in 1970 when Howard Cardin, the brother of Ben Cardin, was selected as city state's attorney, and when he ran, he lost in the primary. So there is precedent for something like this happening.
Well, we want to know what you think. Should City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby resign? So far, 95% of you say yes. We still want to hear from you. Please weigh in by heading to foxbaltimore.com/vote. Now, Marilyn Mosby's time as state attorney in Baltimore has been marked by some major news stories. Here's a look.
I'm Marilyn Mosby, and I'm running for state's attorney.
Marilyn Mosby first gained local notoriety when she defeated incumbent Greg Bernstein in the race for city state's attorney back in 2014.
You see, this vision, this idea, this dream that was first contrived in my mind as a little girl, that I would one day be in a position to make a positive difference.
She made national news just a few months later when she indicted 6 Baltimore police officers in the wake of the death of Freddie Gray.
We have probable cause to file criminal charges.
The controversial indictments came just days after Gray's death sparked widespread riots across the city of Baltimore. Her decision won praise from the national media, including Vogue magazine, but others criticized the indictments, calling them a reckless rush to judgment. In the end, Mosby failed to get a conviction in any of the officers' cases. The next controversy Mosby faced involved her frequent speaking engagements, out-of-town travel, and her private business dealings. Though she maintained that she did nothing wrong, she did ask City Inspector General Isabel Mercedes Cumming to investigate.
It's all about accountability and transparency.
When the investigation was complete, the IG found Mosby was out of town for 144 days during a 2-year period, didn't report 15 out-of-town trips to the city's Board of Estimates, and used dormant businesses as tax write-offs. At the same time, Mosby was pushing forward with her progressive prosecution policies. She called a news conference last year to announce she would no longer prosecute what she called low-level crimes like prostitution and drug possession to focus more on shootings and murders. This year, she made the change permanent.
Clearly, the data suggests that there is no public safety value in prosecuting these low-level offenses.
In her first year in office, murders jumped 63% to more than 300, and they've remained above 300 every year since. Also this year came word that Mosby and her husband were the subjects of a federal investigation, with investigators going after a wide range of business and campaign records. Fox 45 News also confirmed that Marilyn Mosby bought 2 homes in Florida weeks before the federal investigation came to light. And more recently, her attorney said she was soliciting donations for her legal defense.
And that was Dan Lamparello reporting for us. Marilyn Mosby first gained local notoriety when she defeated incumbent Greg Bernstein in the race for city state's attorney in 2014. And she made national news just a few months later. Well, Marilyn Mosby is certainly not the only prominent Baltimore politician to face legal trouble in recent years. Former Mayor Catherine Pugh is still serving a 3-year sentence in federal prison on charges linked to the Healthy Holly book scandal. She pleaded guilty to 4 charges of conspiracy and tax evasion. Former Mayor Sheila Dixon faced her own corruption scandal. She was indicted on charges of stealing gift cards for the needy. She was found guilty of 1 misdemeanor count, and she resigned from office. And then there is former state delegate Cheryl Glenn. She resigned just before a federal indictment for wire fraud and bribery. She pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Well, Baltimore's top prosecutor now under a federal indictment. Stay with us. Our extensive live team coverage on Marilyn Mosby's charges continue.
And we have eyes on our next winter weather maker. It's moving into the country from Canada. I'll break down the timing and the impacts that we could see from this snow event.
What am I talking about? Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Check.
Yeah, of course. Check 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Well, we're continuing to follow breaking news. City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has been indicted on federal charges of perjury and making a false statement on a loan application. Our live team coverage continues. We'll hear from former federal prosecutor Thiru Vignarajah, but Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joins us now. Mackenzie, you continue to comb through the indictment. Tell us what you are finding now.
Yeah, Mary, we know that this is a 4-count indictment, right? And counts 2 and 4 really relate to those 2 vacation home properties that Marilyn Mosby purchased in Florida. According to this indictment, it says that on the loan application for the mortgage to purchase both homes, she did not disclose unpaid federal taxes that date back years, and she also didn't disclose a $45,000 federal tax lien that had been placed on the home that she owns with current City Council President Nick Mosby here in Baltimore. Now, when it comes to that tax lien, we know the history of that. We have done extensive reporting on the property and the tax lien itself, when it was paid off, and how Nick Mosby went back and forth on the legitimacy of the tax lien in the first place. But according to this indictment on that loan, Marilyn Mosby, not only did she not disclose the tax lien, she also checked a box that said that she did not have any sort of debt to the federal government. Now, that, as we know, was not true because of the tax lien that was placed on the home. Now, we have to be clear that this indictment is just an allegation. It's not a conviction. But also going through this, we learned a little bit more combing through some of the details, because they also take a look at the second home rider form, which means that when Mosby purchased these vacation homes in Florida, she ultimately said that she would be using them as a primary residence, but she in fact handed them over to a second company, to a property management company, essentially, to manage them and rent them out. Now, in doing that, she got a lower tax rate and a lower interest rate on those properties. Now, according to this news release from the U.S. Attorney's Office, if convicted on the 2 perjury counts, she faces a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. And as far as those false statements on the loan application, she faces a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison for each of those charges. Now, it is unlikely, the U.S. Attorney himself says in here, that his sentences typically are less than those maximum sentences. We're still waiting to find out the date that Marilyn Mosby will appear in court for her first appearance, and those details will likely evolve as we learn more about this indictment. Mary?
Mackenzie Frost reporting live for us. Thank you. Well, former federal prosecutor Thiru Vignarajah is here with us now live in the studio. Thiru, what's your analysis of the indictment? I know earlier in our coverage you said it is a sad day for Baltimore City.
It really is a sad day, and this is a startling indictment in a city that has frankly seen too many of these. One of the things that really jumps off the page is that the allegations all allude to conduct by Ms. Mosby that has to do with her trying to make more money. You know, claiming that she is able to access her retirement account to get $40,000 and then $80,000, but then spending that on investment properties, luxury homes in Florida. You know, using the loan application to get a lower interest rate by claiming it's a secondary home instead of a rental property. Failing to disclose that there was outstanding debts to the federal government, which is also a way of making sure that the bank doesn't charge a higher interest rate. Those are the kinds of things that I think are going to alarm the people of Baltimore. We've had so many sad stories. The state's attorney must have known how much scrutiny she and her husband were under. All of us who are in the public eye realize that there's a high degree of public scrutiny. Against that backdrop, knowing the stakes here in Baltimore, if this conduct is true, it is really, really troubling and a deeply sad day for Baltimore.
How does this play out for her personally in the days ahead and then for her office?
I mean, the two tracks are going to be interrelated, but you have to bear in mind that there's an election on the horizon in just 6 months, and there's also the legal consequences of what's about to unfold. In the first couple of days, you're going to see an arraignment where she's going to have to formally plead not guilty to these charges. I presume that that is what she will do. Then there will be a period of discovery and motions hearings, and then ultimately a trial. What pace that goes depends on a lot of factors, but it no doubt is not going to go to trial in the next 6 months, which means she could end up standing for re-election without this being resolved. And that, of course, is going to be a shadow on the election. The people of Baltimore are going to have to weigh what this means. And it also means she may have to address these charges publicly in order to lift the cloud with respect to the political consequences.
She is the top law enforcement official in Baltimore City. How does this affect the confidence of residents in Baltimore City?
I mean, it has to shake the confidence of the people of Baltimore. We've seen this movie before. We've seen it too many times. Sheila Dixon, Catherine Pugh, Darrell D'Souza, Ed Norris. The list goes on of high-ranking public officials in Baltimore. These are not officials' aides. This is the mayor. This is the police commissioner being indicted for federal charges and ultimately being hauled off to federal prison. That has got to shake the confidence when in a city that has had so many of these stories to come before, to have our state's attorney, our elected highest law enforcement official who's responsible for fighting crime in the most violent city in America. What a terrible and dark moment for the city.
All right, former federal prosecutor Thuru Vignarajah, thank you.
Many are talking about and sounding off on Mosby's indictment online. Here's some of what you are saying, and let's take a look at some of it. And I'll read a portion of this here. It's time for her to be suspended without pay until the trial. If she's found not guilty, then give her back pay. If she's guilty, then no pay. Here, someone says, why has she not been removed from office yet? There is a process, we'll say that. Mark says, shocking here. Timothy says, it's about time. Another comment from Barbara, ever since she went after these crooked cops, they've been trying to get her, please lock Trump up for all of the lies he told. And one last comment here, way to go, Fox 45. You guys never gave up on this administration. And of course, we will continue to report on this breaking story.
Right now, you are taking a look downtown and at Harbor and at Towson. In both places, we're seeing nice and quiet weather. We've got temperatures remaining in the 40s. And then on the HD radar, you can see a little bit of precipitation. We are tracking a few weather makers coming our way, including one that could bring snow to the area. Now, there is a lot of uncertainty about the weekend potential snowstorm, but what we do know now is that it will likely start Sunday afternoon, continuing into early Monday morning. There is the chance for snow and a little bit of rain. Some spots could even see more of a wintry mix with sleet and freezing rain. That, of course, could lead to hazardous roadways as we head into Monday morning. Now, right now, we've got a cold front that is approaching the region. That could lead to a few flurries in western Maryland, but the rest of us do stay dry. A cold front then moves across the state as we head into the early morning tomorrow. That's going to result in temperatures a few degrees lower. But what we're now tracking is that low pressure system that's going to move across the plains and down into the southeast. That's what's going to lead to the next chance for snow here. And we could be talking a few inches of accumulation. By Saturday, it is in the southeast, and then it will move toward the mid-Atlantic heading into Sunday. Now, once we get to the morning, we're still talking dry weather, and then eventually by the early afternoon, that system starts to bring snow to us. The dark blue indicates the chance for some areas of heavy snow, but that does change to rain as we head into the night. That could last for a few hours before a few flurries move back across the state heading into early Monday morning. So again, there's still a lot to be determined with the system. We'll fine-tune those details as that low pressure system gets closer to the area. Tonight, temperatures fall to the upper 20s and the low 30s with mostly cloudy skies. And then tomorrow, we are looking at another day with warmer temperatures. I'll break down what you can expect coming up in the exclusive 10-day forecast. Back to you.
Jasmine, thank you. City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby indicted on multiple federal charges. Stay with us as our breaking news coverage continues. We are continuing to follow this developing story. City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby indicted on charges of perjury and making a false statement on a loan application. Our team coverage continues tonight at 10. We'll hear from top-ranking city officials, as well as perspective from the people of Baltimore. In the meantime, stay with us for up-to-the-minute updates on foxbaltimore.com and our social media platforms. Now let's check in with meteorologist Jasmine Lomax one more time. Jasmine?
Thanks, Mary. After a very warm day today, we're looking at above average temperatures once again tomorrow. It will be a little bit breezy at times, with temperatures reaching the mid to upper 40s. Expect sunshine by the afternoon. Then the cold weather returns overnight. We fall to the teens. Temperatures in the 20s for Saturday. Sunday, we're slightly above freezing, but by the afternoon, we could be looking at our next chance for snow. Eventually, that changes over to rain and a wintry mix as we head into early Monday. By the afternoon, we're back in the 40s. And then as we head into Tuesday, temperatures in the 30s. Beyond that, temperatures stay in the 30s and the 40s as we head into the upcoming weekend. Back to you.
Jasmine, thank you. That's all for Fox 45 News at 6. Family Feud is next. We'll see you again for more coverage tonight at 10. Thank you for watching.